Welcome back. You're still watching Power Breakfast, the news review this morning. My name is Freddie Ndimuli. I'm here with Cynthia Mutere, Javas Bigambo, and Mark Bichachi as my panelists this morning. Now, let's take a look at the big headline on the Standard. Exposed 10 rigging risks in poll register. Audit firm KPMG's report on IEBC voter register reveals serious loopholes that could be used to manipulate the August 8 voter list, which it found to lack mandatory security features, thus exposing it to risk of being hacked and data of the 19.6 million registered voters deleted, added, or amended. Now, the Standard has been fair to us and actually listed those loopholes. 5 of them are on the front page. The full story is on page 10 of the Standard. The 10 loopholes they are listed, highlighted in yellow. 2 active default administrator accounts whose default passwords have not been changed. This could be used by an unauthorized person to delete, add, or amend voters register. So many other loopholes here. Manual transfer of files using flash disks could compromise data integrity. Poor records on death makes it difficult to weed out dead voters. Some registered twice by separately using passport and national IDs. Over 500,000 voters have issues with their details ranging from non-existing, and these are some of the problems even that NASA has raised with regard to dead voters still being on the register. Now, this report by KPMG is already out. It's actually on the IEBC's website. You can download it and look at it. But surely, 25 days to the elections, why are we still talking about the loopholes?
I appreciate the KPMG report. I have not read the terms of reference of the KPMG in respect to undertaking the task for IEBC. However, I think it would be reasonable and proper for reports not to be too alarmist in nature. Yes, it's proper to point out some of the limitations and loopholes, all right, and to have the IEBC undertake that which it's supposed to undertake, so that the election is free, fair, verifiable, etc. Now,
but surely, Javas, I'm sure whoever commissioned this report, it was for their own benefit. It's the IEBC which commissioned that.
Very true. And that's what, for me, how I look at it.
KPMG simply
how I look at
its job.
Remember, we expect the IEBC to do and to undertake the recommendations of their auditor, whom they contracted to do this work. And as we head to the election, remember, we're just about close to reasonably 20 days where anything can be done. No, where anything can be done. Yes. Anything reasonable. To rid of anxieties, etc. IEBC should move with speed, and beyond that, actually, it is proper that at times such as this, the IEBC should apprise the nations on what it has undertaken in respect to the interventions or to meeting some of the recommendations of KPMG.
Exactly.
It should apprise the nation.
Because there's actually a feeling that the IEBC has gone quiet on this. Some of the issues raised by KPMG in their audit report, that the IEBC has gone quiet. Whether or not they're working to actually rectify or remedy some of these issues, we are not aware.
And that's what the communications departments need to come out to at least assure us of. Are these questions being raised? Is someone doing something about it? Are they tackling some of the things that they have said? Because now, as the terms of references, what was the cleanup all about? Were they not to seal some of these gaps now that are coming up? And are they just supposed to tell us that this is what we found and this is what we did about it? Not to again say that we've done our job, these are the results, but there's still other loopholes, you see. So it's not like they have closed their job yet. So we would want to know the terms of reference, like you mentioned. But was this supposed to be done 25 days into an election? And Kriegler said at least 2 years. And so I don't know what the IEBC...
Well, in terms of timelines, we lost
electoral reforms in Kenya has been something that I know the NASA coalition has been really pushing for, right from the Okoa Kenya into going into the streets and whatever.
Even NASA has been accused of messing up IEBC timelines as well.
Because now when nothing is done, then you go into courts that brings in all these other injunctions.
Let's allow Mark to say something.
You see, here's the biggest problem that the IEBC has. They're PR inept. They're communication-wise deaf and dumb. They don't understand how to handle the public. And here's where the problem starts. Once that report was issued. Concurrent to it, they should have issued steps which they are taking to make sure that loopholes that are there have been sealed. Now, I've spoken to many of the commissioners, and I realize there's work they're trying to do in the background. But the problem with that is you're not waylaying the fears that there is a clear and present danger as we walk into this election. So here's the issue. Number one, there's a huge PR and communications gap as far as the IEBC is concerned. That is one. Second part of this thing is, of course, we in Kenya we handle elections like they surprise us. You know, it is like, oh my God, I woke up, it's 2017. That's how we act. But in the time that we have, seeing that this is basically by and large an electronic process and we're just voting manually, we are transmitting data.
I think all the electoral institutions that are involved in this whole process, at least checks and ballots, there needs to be a situation room where now we're not being reactionary, but we're out there, out in the front and speaking to some of these situations that are coming before the media even highlights it and makes it look like such a crisis that there are these gaps, but that you're doing something about all these gaps that have been highlighted, and that you're speaking to the nation to build confidence. Because once again, we're talking about free, fair, credible, verifiable elections.
Very true. And we are not bidding for, to assist IEBC, but we'll be available to assist them where we are seeing evidently they've got limitations.
They're listening.
However, the thing is this: I would expect that IEBC by tomorrow should pull up their socks. And in fact, when it comes to the issue of oppressing the nation, that allays various fears that have to do with the elections. The other thing that any reasonable person will be looking at right now, for example, as we go into the August 8th election, how has IEBC prepared to say help voters who need assistance to vote? For example, those who are deaf and blind. How are they going to be assisted in a manner that will not compromise their franchise?
They say they have voter educators out there in the ground.
It's not about voter education, and that's what I'm talking about, uprising the nation.
This is what we're doing about it.
This is what we are doing. These are the preparations in place.
So you feel that the IEBC has focused more on the mechanics of the process.
It just keeps responding to court cases. That's all that we are seeing.
It is possible that it has been thrown into the confusion. Some politicians are stirring up IEBC. For example, yes, when it comes to the issue of the presidential ballot papers, much as that's something that we don't want to discuss much because it's before
we will discuss that, because actually it's part of the headlines, and we'll be coming to that in a short while.
Okay, fine. But the thing is this: we also need political parties to help IEBC reasonably discharge its duties, and that support should be complementary and not otherwise.
You see, the problem here, and I agree with the good lady here, the most important thing is the IEBC needs a situation room, okay, where the technocrats meet communicators and where they're able to churn out information as much as possible. You know, one of the things, if you want people to stop panicking, just give them information every 2 minutes. Okay? That is what should happen. You understand? I'm not seeing them buying ads in newspapers in huge print explaining every tiny detail of the election. Why? Because in as much as there are loopholes, if I feel informed, then I also feel equipped to be able to cover those loopholes. So the IEBC, Yani, if you're listening, I'm begging you, please listen to me. Communicate, please.
It's a part of confidence.
Even if the IEBC is totally unable to handle some of this, or to fix with certainty some of these loopholes, they should say so. So that even the voter or the political parties and the players in this election can be prepared to go into the process.
I think this is evidence that it has been said. It means that they are not able to. And what does that speak to 25 days into
when
election?
We talk about,
do you want to hear that? Do you want to hear that we are not prepared? No, we need to be prepared, because we are going to have an election on 8th of August. And so these gaps need to be sealed.
Because now, this time more than ever, the process really matters. It is how the process, the mechanics of how we're going to vote that really matters. Previously, it was really about the campaigns. This time around, it's how the IEBC is going to do the process.
And it's about the good-naturedness of the process itself. Now, we know very well that the IEBC has got a communication department, perhaps well-resourced, well-equipped.
Do they?
Now, no. You see, the thing
yes,
is...
Yes, they do. We've had the lady coming out and speaking
and even when we see their press statements, we see signed off by the communication department. The thing is not about waiting on citizens to call to find out information. Let IEBC be ahead of the citizens. Let IEBC be ahead of political parties.
Yes.
How do you become ahead of political parties and all the players? Step up. Be the ones to brief them every morning,
It is the
in
briefing.
the evening, and in fact have, beyond just the communication department, have the electoral preparedness communication system in place, where these guys now, their work is not just about the IEBC communication, because there's too much you can communicate about IEBC, but in terms, the preparedness as we move to the August 8th election. And much more than that, let Chebukati be available, not just be delivering press statements alone. Let him be available to discuss issues, because at times, of course, on this part of the world, we value so much the presence and the availability and the visibility of the chiefs of the election bodies. Let IEBC not be on the defensive. Let them come to discuss issues with the easiness that is expected of them, to help every citizen, the average Kenyan, understand that we are in good hands.
Let's now take a look at a headline that's connected to all that we've been discussing, and the polls team ponders ballot job options. By yesterday, IEBC had received 40 suggestions from the public. Of course, they had been directed to include the public in the way forward in as far as tendering for the presidential ballot papers is concerned. Yet the appeal is still pending. The Court of Appeal will tomorrow start hearing an appeal filed by IEBC to contest last Friday's judgment, which nullified the presidential ballot printing tender awarded to Al Ghurair. The application by the Commission will be argued before a 5-judge bench of the Court of Appeal. Now, some of the issues that IEBC has raised is, okay, fine, what is the framework of this public participation? Yeah, and my understanding is that some of the misgivings about and what forced them to appeal is that, okay, previously they've actually procured quite a number of things up to this point.
Without public participation.
Without public participation. If that ruling is let to stand the way it has, or the way it is, then what happens to the previous procurement processes? Can they be challenged in a court of law as well?
There is legal political conundrum here that we are faced with, and that's why I think it was important for IEBC, or they find wisdom in making that kind of appeal.
Yes.
For reference on the issue of public participation, because by way of the last ruling, where it was specific to the presidential ballot papers alone, question arises as to what happens then up to the same issue of public participation about the other ballot papers. However, much more than that, when you look at
now that gives the weight on their case when they go into appeal. 7 days after the ruling last week, now we're of course going to receive now they say this process is going to start tomorrow. 7 days. How much longer are we going to wait for it? It's going to be like 10 days to the election before a verdict is given. We want solutions right now instead of just theoretical analysis, hypothesis. But now, what can be done now?
Yes. I appreciate
25 days to the election.
I appreciate where the court is standing on this issue of public participation. It being a value, of course, amongst the national values in Article 10, sub-Article 2 of the Constitution. When you go to whether it's Article 174 of the Constitution, or when you want to go to Section 91 of the County Government Act, yes, the place of public participation is very valued.
But is it
However,
defined?
of course, you know very well that we do not have a Public Participation Act at the national level. We expected the National Assembly and the Senate to be done with that act that would give guidance on all these issues. But now the question arises, and how the political parties have approached this matter. If they have to determine, and as the way, if you look at the last meeting, then to what extent would we say that the hands of the procuring entity, that's the IEBC, been tied to the extent of determining in a very liberal way, by way of the Public Procurement and Disposal Act, how a procuring entity is supposed to do it? They need not be guided. And that's where the challenge is.
And they stood on the clause that they can do direct procurement, and they went ahead to do that. And so that cannot be challenged because they have that even in their jurisdiction, that they can directly procure services, and that's what they've been doing previously.
And so if you're going to actually award the
the key thing for me for this IEBC thing, and I've said this last week, the question is, there's a magic date. It's called the 17th of July, which is what Al Ghurair said is the last day within which they can still prepare the presidential ballot papers in time. Okay, so
today is 13th. That's 4 days from now.
4 days from now. Now, the reality of the matter, I hope IEBC in their wisdom, as they're appealing this case, are also pursuing meeting the demands of the ruling of the previous judge, so that you're not hedging this election on the results of this appeal case, which could be time barred as far as the printing window that is required
for that particular company. So therefore, it's open to other companies.
You see, the thing is, to be honest with you, I've done a bit of research into companies that can print this. There's a precious few that actually can qualify across the world, and even a precious few even more that we're willing to deal with Kenya. But that being besides the point, I'm not saying Al-Ghurair is the only option. Let's assume that the standard is the 17th, because we want this thing printed sooner rather than later. IEBC needs to have a two-pronged approach. As you approach the legal side of things, you already have a ruling that gives you certain requirements that you're able to meet, and that's why I think they met with the politicals on Monday and Tuesday, representatives, and they're seeking public participation. Now, for me, what I think IEBC should do is they should have, as they pursue the court case, have your technocrats trying to make sure that whatever company, whatever person is able to print this thing meets the requirements of the ruling of the previous judges, and we're able to move forward.
Already done that with Al-Ghurair.
Yes, and remember that the other grounds that had been sought by, or the prayers and the grounds by the NASA were dismissed.
Yes.
The thing is this: I know we're a nation that is great and made of greatness. Cynicism and mere speculation will not help us. It is time that politicians also made our progress possible.
Yes.
Because if it's purely based on cynicism, then we are, politicians and political parties are in fact the propellers, the engines of this kind of anxiety that is gripping.
How do we progress when we are doing everything wrong? Would that be progress?
But the question is, by yesterday the Commission had already received 40 proposals from the public, as directed by the court. Include the public, now you already have 40 different proposals from the... What do you do with this?
You know, the funny thing is about public participation, the IEBC has the right to ignore. In other words, that your recommendation...
Simply because, as Java said, there's no participation act.
Yes. You see, the reality is of public participation. I'll give you the example of the Kenyan budget. It's also something that we're supposed to publicly participate. So I can write in and say, there's a road outside my house, I would like it to be paved. Okay, the government has the right to say that in the priority of roads that we need to build, yours comes number 6,000. So after we've done 5,991,
I think that's the methodology that county governments are using. Public participation is basically presenting it, put it in the media, say that this is out there. If anyone would like to say anything, yes. And if you get nothing, you have put it out there.
And that's
I think that's what I think, like in National Assembly and Senate has been doing. You only see the advertisement that this is going to be passed. Public participation. If you've got any views to present, please write, email, show up, say something
public
about
participation,
it. And that is public. At least you've given an opportunity for.
Yeah, but from where I see it, public participation is not merely public ventilation. Because when our people participate, it's a question of not just listening to them, but considering the weight or the significance of their views to the issue at hand.
But to what extent will you consider these views? Because there could be divergence as they come.
Timelines
and prioritization. I absolutely agree with you, but also remember that we live in a democratic nation. So part of public participation is having our representatives represent us. That is also part of public participation. And so when the public gives their views, it's not to ventilate, you're quite right, but it is also to give a list of priority and to remind your representatives that did you think about this?
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's look at it practically now. As you said, Al-Ghurair, which already had been contracted to do this job, probably is the easiest option. We only have a 4-day window between now. The 5-judge bench could actually start sitting tomorrow, this Saturday and Sunday. So 17th, 18th is Monday, Tuesday. Yes. Chances are this tender will still go back to Al-Ghurair. Does that present a problem?
No problem at all, because then you would want to put in safeguards on why you feel, because some of the arguments that NASA presented was like they felt like Al-Ghurair had gone to bed, of course, with Jubilee.
Has that changed?
Has that changed? Well, if then you win the case that they're going ahead to print this, and we have no confidence in that company at all, do not touch anything to do with me, then you would be seeking to show NASA why you feel
Hence the question.
that.
Are we looking at another problem?
Of course,
Yes, how do you
NASA
convince NASA that it's okay for Al Ghurair to go ahead and
but it's not just about NASA. Now,
No, because they have these fears.
NASA accused Jubilee of going to bed with Al Ghurair. By the ruling of the High Court removed the bed. So the issue of the bedding here does not even arise. Now, of course, it's not a question of just assuring NASA that this matter is, it's very transparent, it's very clear, it's very open. But every player, because even every citizen, any Kenyan wants to know that this issue is free, fair, and that no person has influenced, directly or otherwise, the process of even printing these ballots. What we need to know, of course, from IEBC, even pending tomorrow's ruling, that all ballot papers, whether it's MCA, governors, ballot papers, etc., including the very vital, of course, the presidential ballot papers, that we are going to have specific number of ballot papers and various security features that has been discussed and assured even by Al Ghurair and even the investigation that has been evidenced here, and that moving forward, political parties and even especially players, and here in this case NASA, needs to have faith.
Do you know what my solution is? It's actually pretty simple. I keep saying IEBC has a PR and communications problem. After that ruling, the first thing I would have done if I was the IEBC communicator is to begin to clean up the arguments that were given by NASA and to show that the court ruled that there is no bed between Jubilee and Al Ghurair. There is no, a lot of there, was it 4, 5, 6 points? A lot of those points were kicked out. So to begin to say, listen, this is what the courts have ruled. Now let us give you our history with Al Ghurair.
For example, do you expect that NASA will continue challenging the tender to
Yes,
Al
they
Ghurair?
will. Yes, because they have said no to Al Ghurair.
It's because IEBC is doing a horrible job of explaining. You see, here's the thing. If my wife suspects I have an affair with her because she's seen me on TV, I need to begin from the beginning. How did I meet her? Where did we go? You understand? Now, what IEBC is not doing is it's not creating any confidence in Al Ghurair. You understand?
Back to the communication problem.
Yes, that's the issue.
It's back to IEBC.
But if IEBC is able to communicate,
moving forward, we need to be looking at local solutions. Who prints our money? Because it was all about these security fees and water market.
But this issue is two-pronged.
We really need to be looking at
there is the communication challenge. Second, of course, we know very well that by way of our laws, you need to explore all appeal mechanisms if you feel discontented. And that there is an avenue. If NASA feels discontented, still it will pursue every kind of appeals mechanism to the last one. And that's what we need now to be looking at. And see how, of course, merging that communication aspect and see how that dissuades by way of convincing openly the opposition and every other party that this matter, actually your speculation or your skepticism, does not even hold water.
I think I would want to go with what you had done. You know, like you said that you had looked at other companies who can do that, and quickly IEBC should have done that right from the ruling, that while they're pursuing the appeal, look at what other companies can do this within the time frame that we have and to deliver.
But to be honest with you,
specifications, and question, someone who would really want to do business with Kenya.
If you are going to say that you're going to pick a company in Kenya that can print as quickly as possible, you'd have to think of companies like Delarue, which prints our money. But the reality of the matter is, the issue is the timing. How long does it take to even do a closed tendering process or a direct tendering process?
Exactly.
It takes a long time. To be honest with you, if we are honest Kenyans, the reality is, and I can bet my top dollar on this, on Monday or Tuesday or even tomorrow, the IEBC will say, we've listened to the public, we've taken in views, we've taken into consideration the court case, and our decision is Al Ghurair. I have a feeling that is what will happen, and I hope they have the presence of mind to begin to talk to the Kenyan public and drive confidence. How do you begin to drive confidence? This is how a polling paper looks like. This is what will happen. This is how
it's not the format of the poll or of the paper. It is the amount printed in favor of the other side.
Time now for another break. Time now for another break. Chef Ali is in the house already cooking up some breakfast. We'll be linking up with Chef Ali in a while. If my director can give me a direction on this, are we going to Chef Ali? Okay, let's take a break. We'll have Chef Ali cooking up some breakfast after this.